Okay, Erev Tov, we are in the 11th day of the month of Elul. 3 weeks from tonight, Rosh Hashanah will be over. We'll be thinking of fasting the next day. Okay, we're talking about different areas of prophecy, and we've talked about the two false areas of prophecy, which is really just idolatry. And now we're going to say, Bahamisnabe B'Shem, and those who prophesize in God's name, Yechalev Gam Keim L'Shnei Chalakim, will be divided up into two parts. The one is also one we can't listen to, and the final one is the one we do listen to. Okay, so first let's get to the one we cannot listen, even in the name of Hashem. And I hope we can scroll down as much as we can. Achelek Harishon, the first category in the name of Hashem, Shisnabe B'Shem Hakel, V'yikra Amon Lahamin Bo V'yitzav L'Varaso. He prophesizes in the name of God, and he calls to the masses to believe what he says about God's service. And he says, I hereby say from God, the Yomer, and he says, Sha'HaKadosh Baruch Hu hosif b'mitzvos mitzvah. Hashem has added a mitzvah. I have it on authority from God. We're adding a mitzvah.
I don't think you can do that.
Ogora mitzvah, or we're going to take one off.
I don't think you can do that.
Nichlala mitzvah sha'asaf, from all the ones that we've gathered, or some from the Sefer Torah. And it doesn't matter what kind of change that he makes. Bein hefresh, bein sheyosef, v'yigal apostle. It doesn't matter if he adds or decreases from a verse in the Torah that has nothing to do with halacha. Ubein sheyosef v'yigal aperish hamakubal, or if he adds or detracts from the way we understand it, the explanation of it. What does this mean? Well, Indian, and what's the concept that I'm saying about over here? I'm explaining my words over here. Is she Yosef or Yigram and Akosov? What does it mean? He adds or subtracts from the pasuk. It means when Shiomar, he says Shakadosh Baruch Hu Omar Elai Ki Ha'orla. You know the mitzvah of Orla. You can't have the fruits for 3 years. Well, guess what? Orla is only Shtei Shavim. Now it's 2 years. It's only 2 years now. You know, we're building the land of Israel. It's very hard to plant and wait 3 years. God said, I'm giving you dispensation, 2 years. And after 2 years, you can have your plants.
What are you going to do with Nisha Ravi?
I don't know. Oh, Shiomar, he says, Hashem said to me, Orla also lirchol osa arba shanim. Orla is also for 4 years, not 3 years, 4 years. And it's all as exchanging from Chelef Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shalasham Yilachem. The pasuk says 3 years you don't need it. Now you might make a change in the text. Better or worse, you can't do that. Oh, or there's another way he could say on authority of God, and we don't listen to him. Oh, Yeshana Beit Kabbalah, or change something in the oral law. Plum, anything. Remember, the oral law is just Hashem's explanation to Moshe what you do. Even if the text would substantiate the change of the oral law, we know, for example, that Tzedukim, right? He says, the David says, I have an authority from God. You know what? Now we're going to start putting the tefillin right between our eyes. Now the time has come for the text to be learned literally, not like the oral understanding. Or the example he gives. Remember, it talks about when two men are fighting and a woman gets involved and grabs one of the men's private parts. And it causes great embarrassment. So what does the Torah say? The literal translating, it says, Kon Shiomer, Shazeh Omer, what the Torah says, Bekatso says kappa, and you cut his hand off. You cut her hand off. Now we know it doesn't mean that. What does it mean? You pay money.
Cash.
That's oral law, money. It says, no, who creases Yabevis? We're going back to Sharia law. You cut the hand off. There ain't no knas mavash. It's not a fine for just embarrassing of money. As the rabbinic law tells us. And he's going to say it's a prophecy. I think I'm making it up. Hashem came to me last night with a prophecy. And he says, V'yomar, he says, Shakadosh Baruch Hu Omer li, Shazu HaMitzvah, She'omar, that this mitzvah that says v'katzos is kapot, and you cut her hand off, who can shoot it? So we learn literally. If someone says that, I raise a yard, we kill him with strangulation. We strangle the false prophet.
Would you put him on medication?
Shunavi sheker, he's a lying prophet who's somech ela kadosh baruch hu. He's relying on Hashem. He's saying it's Hashem is doing it. Mashallah, Hashem did not say this.
Rabbi,
Yes, sir.
so how does this differ from adding a mitzvah between adding a shir kichanu mitzvah for the Hanukkah?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm gonna just put that on the table for right now. Okay, I'm gonna put that on the table, but the simple answer is it was already hinted to in the Torah. Hashem, we already know there's many ramazim in the parsha of Emor.
Yeah.
It talks about after the Yom Tovim, it talks about lighting the Ner Tamid. That's the hint to Hanukkah.
But couldn't anybody find a hint? Like they
No, this is it's like Allah Moshe. We see it's like Hashem told us. Hashem told Moshe, listen, it's not now. We're not going to need it now, but they're going to need it later. Okay, it was ready.
Well, didn't they have the whole
Hinted
that
to-
Mishkan ready on the 25th of Kislev?
It
And they said
was,
there's
it
going to be
was,
another
yes,
inauguration.
yes.
on
So
this
that's
day.
all part of what
The oral tradition.
the mitzvahs were on. And here's the point: it's not a prophet saying it. The rabbis can get together and they can say, you know what? We know the will of Hashem is that now that this miracle happened on Purim, that Hashem wants us to celebrate Hanukkah, and
So
we
that's
already
not enough.
know that Hashem had it in the works. And he
Big
said,
difference.
when you guys are ready to pull the plug on it and to do it, then you're going to do it.
That's the key.
What?
That's the key. It's not enough that's saying this. It's the rabbis that are putting together and getting.
Hashem tells us to listen to the rabbis.
Yes, he does.
And listening to the rabbi. And Hashem has hinted in the Torah already that there's these holidays will exist at a later time. That's the point.
One person came and said, I don't know that you should like Hanukkah candles.
That's
No, he couldn't do that.
Yeah, dude.
That's approved.
He couldn't do that. You can't do that.
Robbie, one other question, I'll just stop here for a second. What I don't understand is, at this time, like, people were much more learned than they are today. So people
At
knew.
which time?
At any.
At the time they had prophets. At the time they
Yeah,
had
the time
prophets.
prophets, people were learned, so they knew. So any guy who's going to be a Navi, he knows that the population know that if he starts telling this stuff, they're going to take him and kill him. So I don't understand, like, because he knows the population knows the halacha.
Obviously, it was not so. Because during the times of Malachim, there were prophets of the Baal and nobody killed them.
There were lots of prophets. There were four. It's only until Eliyahu came around. There were four.
You know what? You're making the assumption that everybody's going to keep everything in the Torah.
No, but it's you're looking at it like it's almost like they're ignorant of this halacha.
No, it's called, I don't want to keep it.
Well, the Shofti.
When the rabbis of the time,
So we're not going to listen to the rabbis. We'll kill the rabbis. That's what's his name? Yanai.
Yeah.
He said, the rabbi said, that's fine. I'll kill you. And he killed them all.
Killed the prophets too. Who was the guy that killed the prophets?
Yeah, whatever.
The time of
You have to understand, in a perfect world, yes, but this is not a perfect world. There are wicked people out there who just killed the rabbis.
Herodis killed a lot of the rabbis.
Orders killed the rabbis.
Yeah, they didn't agree with what he was
So
doing.
now we don't kill the rabbis, we fire them.
Fight. Like Donald Trump.
We fire them. That's it. So we don't listen to them. So that, you have to remember, there were all kinds of other forces, as we mentioned yesterday. And unfortunately, Jewish people don't listen all the time. We're just saying what the law is. Okay, so we don't believe it.
He had followers of Shabtai Tzvi.
Shabtai Tzvi was only at the end when he told us to do something we shouldn't do. But in the beginning, he looked like he was a fine guy.
I find him inch.
He was, and people remember, it was right after Khmelnytsky, so people were desperate for the Mashiach.
Yeah.
You know what? The modern Shabtai Tzvi was the secular state of Israel.
That's it.
It's
After
another,
the
it's another
Holocaust.
false Messiah. secular state of Israel, not the religious state of Israel. So that's a false Messiah. And when people after a Holocaust, they're looking for Messiah. So they gave him a false Messiah. So Shabtai said, until he said, Matir Asurim, and we can now eat treif.
Wow.
You gotta make the bracha Matir Asurim, here, have some chaleb. That was not good.
Didn't work out.
And then especially when he converted to
Muslim.
Islam,
Yeah,
that kind of sealed the deal. Right? Anyway, Ve'ein lahavi gam bazelos, and we don't look if he makes a miracle. He said, I'm going to tell you the halachas like me, because look, I'm going to do a miracle now. Shirarei hanavi asher, it should be hair up. It's not hell up, but hair up. The Navi who shows he's going to do all kinds of miracles, and he's going to want to instill a faith to verify him as a good Navi and to believe in him. But we're not going to do that. As it said by Moshe, that with you, they will believe you forever. So what did Hashem say? What did Hashem say when he said, we're going to believe you, Moshe? He said, "B'Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Torah, we know other Torah but the one that Moshe gives. It's not in the heavens. Once the Torah was given down to this world, God doesn't get involved anymore in changing halachos. And it says, so it's in your mouth and your heart to do the Torah. What does that mean? The mitzvahs, you know, that it's on your mouth. This is what we know. Was and the logic that you come out with Yud Gimel Midos Torah in the and that's the power that comes from the heart. And the Torah also warned us not to add or subtract, as it says. You don't add or subtract from mitzvahs. Okay, therefore, the Gemara says, Ein Navi. I've been way behind. Nobody woke me up about this.
I'm following.
Ein Navi Rashay L'Chadish Torah. A Navi can never add anything from now on. Now we know he's lying if he's saying it's Hashem's name. Hashem said we're not going to change anything. So if that's the case, the Samachla Mashalo Dibralo, and he's relying on, on what Hashem didn't say to him. We got to kill him. As it says, if the Navi has chutzpah to say something I didn't tell him, and this Navi will die. So this is the third category, where you say halacha changes in the name of Hashem. Even if you do miracles, doesn't mean a thing. So after all that, we finally come to, okay, so what can a Navi do? Where does he interface somehow in the realm of application of Torah? And this is now what he can do. What's the second aspect from the Navi, from Hashem? Could go, and he's going to tell us two major points. The first one's kind of short. The second one is much longer. Number one, he calls people to serve Hashem. He commands them to strengthen their mitzvah observance. To say, you got to keep the Torah, not to add, not to subtract, but to do it as it's supposed to do. Amar Hanavi Amasayim, like the last Navi says, Malachi, the last Navi, the last Perek. He says, Zichro Toras Moshe Avshi. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which means the Aftia, and that's what you got to remember that it's the Navi's job to encourage fulfillment of the Torah. And he goes further. The Aftiach L'Misha Aseno, and the Navi can make promises. I promise if you keep the Torah, the Gemulas Torah is going to be a good reward. And that's what one of the Nevi'im writes. He said, give tzedakah and test Hashem.
Yes.
And I promise you, he's going to rain you down with blessings beyond what you could do. That enough he could do. He could say, I'm telling you in the name of, even not in the name of Hashem.
Yeah, test them.
Just do it. Do your mitzvahs. The yasful and to warn people who don't keep the mitzvahs. Bonus with the punishments, such as Yossi Yeshaya. Yeshaya was warning us. Yirmiyahu, Yecheskel, Vizulas, and Yecheskel. They were warning us. You're going to be destroyed. That's job number one. Okay, that also doesn't really influence halacha. It's just encouraging or discouraging sins. But that's an important job of the Navi. Now comes an interesting part. And the next one we will call, if the first one is encouraging people to follow the Torah, the second one will say his input that is to be accepted regarding public policies.
Whoa.
Now, a king can also do this, but a Navi can do it straight without any intervening. I'll explain in a minute what that means. But that can involve halacha, so to speak. The Yitzavet Sivuyim, he can make commands for us to do certain things. It's not something to go against the Torah.
Does he say
I'm gonna tell-
or Tzivuyim?
Sivuyim, what do you have? The Yitzavet, it's
Oh, yeah,
Sivuyim.
yeah, I'm reading the next thing.
Are
I
you talking
apologize.
about fences?
I'm going to tell you in a minute.
Sorry. I
The
was reading
Yesar Isurim Bedavar Sheinim in the Torah. And he can prohibit us to not do things that are not written in the Torah. It's going to explain. Sheomer, for example, like he told Shmuel Hanavi, told Shaul, he says, "Hilochamu al ir plonis," fight against a city. And it can even be against a Jewish city. Oim uma plonis, or with a certain nation that has other religions. Atah. Now, like Shmuel told Shaul to destroy Amalek. It does not necessarily have to be that Hashem told him to do it. Now, this is, I would definitely call public policy. Well, who knows when it's the right time to attack Amalek and to obliterate Amalek? Well, there is a mitzvah to destroy Amalek, but when and that, we don't know. But the Navi can tell us, and he shapes the public policy. Or, for example, and you must listen to the Navi when he tells you that. That's why Shmuel was so upset with Shaul when he left over a little bit. He said, "What are you doing? I told you to destroy them completely," right? Or let's say he's going to tell you not to kill someone. When the prophet Elisha told the Melech Yisrael, Yehoram, the nation, the Aram, was going into the Shomron, and he said, "Don't attack them. Don't attack them." Like the famous story. Or Yeshaya told people not to bring any water from the wall. There's a story over there in Yeshaya. And Yirmiyahu told the Jewish people of the northern kingdom to not to fight in Eretz Yisrael, etc., etc. They shape public policy. The prophet says, "Don't do this battle. Yes, do this battle." Okay. Now you can say, "What about the Urim V'Tumim?" Well, first of all, the Malchei Yisrael did not have the Urim V'Tumim.
Right.
The northern kingdom did not have the Urim V'Tumim. Okay. And sometimes Urim V'Tumim wouldn't answer. Or sometimes Hashem doesn't want to sell with the Urim V'Tumim. A Navi can say whatever he wants. Of course, there's going to be all kinds of qualifications to this, as we will learn. You have to know he's a trusted Navi, and that's coming up. How do you know if he's a trusted Navi? That's coming up. That's we're going to see. He's going to go through it and explain to us. But that is what he can do. The Navi can say, "Go to battle. Don't go to battle. Do this. Don't do that." Who are you to do? I'm the Navi. Now, does it mean that Hashem has always told the Navi? Not necessarily. But remember, the Navi is a very holy person. He's got the pulse of reality.
Well, didn't he tell Yeshayahu not to go to battle, and he went Yeshaya.
That's
He
right.
went to battle.
That's right. That's what we Yoshio. That's what we say every Tisha B'Av.
Don't
Hashem,
go.
Hashem,
Don't go.
Hashem didn't tell
Right.
the prophet not to go, but he knew people were faking him out. You have to listen. Yes,
Sometimes the Navi asks the question wrong.
sometimes the Navi what?
Asked the question wrong to prove it for me. Didn't phrase it correctly, so they got a vague answer. We saw it like in the Naf, where some people were fines.
Well, so listen, that's different. You're talking about Eli who misread Hannah. Okay, well, Eli had a number of certain faults.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
he made a mistake.
So, Rabbi, what
He
would
made a
you-
mistake, but well, you see, Eli in Bechlal was a disaster.
His kids.
Well, it was a
Good.
tzaddik, but still,
Yeah.
You know,
Go
times
ahead.
I think it said, should I go to war? You know, get like.
but the Navi is always spot on. The Navi's spot on.
So, what
What do you
call-
mean?
Shmuel, Eli
Well,
was.
give me an example. The Navi says, don't go to battle, you don't go to battle. He says, do go to battle. He told Yosha, don't go to battle. He went to battle, he lost, he got killed. Plain and simple,
He was a righteous guy.
right? Shaul was supposed to kill all of Amalek. He
Yeah.
didn't kill all of Amalek. So what happened? He lost his kingdom. Right? Nasan Navi. He comes to David HaMelech.
You
He
did
says,
wrong with
you did
Bathsheba.
wrong. He says, you're gonna be punished.
A big time.
Right? You got to do tshuva, right? So they but this is not changing halacha. Now, of course, there are halachas of going to battle. He's shaping the public policy of halacha.
But we said that.
We're
and like
allowed
Eliyahu
to go to
was
battle, but there's procedures. He's got the inner track on the procedures.
But don't they have that inner track also because Eliyahu was allowed to do a bama even when the
Well, that's a separate thing, which we're going to get to in another day or two.
Okay.
That's Horah Shah. That's a special thing.
Rabbi,
Yes.
so what would you call them when, I seem to remember a story, maybe it was in hundreds of years ago in Germany where the community was getting very sick and the rabbi stood up on Yom Kippur and he said, and he ate in front of the congregation just because he wanted them to eat. So
That's different.
Now he's changing the law though. Because
He's
No,
not
no,
an Navi.
he's not
He's a
changing the
rabbi.
law. He's not changing the law because he is prioritizing the
Yeah.
laws.
Should have done
For
it.
example, in the realm of halacha, we have rules such as aseh dochalos aseh, a positive mitzvah command that pushes away negative. So there's rules. One of the rule is it's a law, it's a halacha that pikuach nefesh pushes off everything.
Save your
Pushes
life.
off everything, saving your life, besides the three cardinal sins. So it's a cholera epidemic. This was, I think it was I think, maybe whatever. So it's a cholera epidemic, and Jews said, we're fasting on Yom Kippur. He says, you're not fasting on Yom Kippur. You're gonna die if you do that. So that, you didn't have to be a prophet, that's, the rabbis have this role too. And the rabbis say, listen, you know what? I rule that this is pikuach nefesh. That's halachic ruling. He says, your life is in danger. And when your life is in danger,
It's
fasting
asur.
means
It's
you
asur
could
to fast.
die.
It's asur to fast.
Now, if you don't listen to the rabbi, the Gemara doesn't say, so it says a snake bites you. Snake bites you, you're bit by a snake. The rabbi says it. I'm sure there are people, you'll see it's coming up. It's coming up. He's going to give such an example shortly. He's going to tell you. So, but that's not even using any discretion. That's not going beyond your limits. He's just saying there's halacha. That one halacha says you have to protect your life. There's another halacha says you have to fast in Yom Kippur. Now we have to weigh how serious is this? Is it a toothache? No, it's not a toothache. Is it a headache? No, it's cholera. And there's thousands of Jews dying every day. So guess what? We got to be strong. And therefore, even if the rabbi himself could have fasted, he felt if I don't eat, nobody will eat. So he was just applying the halacha. And he was ruling that the halacha was like that. Here, the Navi saying, go to battle, not going to battle. There isn't really any ruling per se. There's any halacha. But the Navi has the insight. He's a very spiritual person. And he knows, God gives him a little the inside track to know what's going on. And by knowing what's going on, he tells to do this or not. Now, next week, we'll begin with how do we know that the Navi is a good Navi? That should take an entire lesson for that. Okay, Yasher Koyach, everybody. Let's stop the share. Stop the recording.